We will be doing a new video series, and we will going to describe how we work with locators. So Selenium, we can use various parameters for identifying locators like XPath, name, ID, and CSS selector, partial link test, tag, and other attributes. So today we are going to discuss how we can use CSS selector to identify the elements. So we are going to use the same web page, our demo web page, and I will describe various ways of using CSS selector. For an example, we can use CSS selector to identify elements with the input tag value, the ID value, the class value, and also like partial string matchings, and also like identify the direct childs and some child of like third child, fifth child, whatever the child under a locator, under an element. So in this one, our web page, we are using this username, password, and this list to demonstrate these things. So first of all, the first variation we are going to discuss is how we identify the element using CSS selector with ID value. So if you have ID like this one, let's say username, okay, username, and your ID is username. So how to identify it as a CSS selector? So the syntax for that is, I have copied the element here, the input class, and this is our username, and this is the ID value, it's also username. And the syntax for CSS selector is tag hash ID, tag hash ID. For an example, now here how we use the CSS selector is input hash username, because our ID value is username, so we are using input hash username. So I have written two methods here to identify by the CSS selector. We just pass the WebDriver and the string we have to use for identify the CSS selector. So this is the actual thing happening, driver.findElement by CSS selector. This is the text, and if there are multiple elements returned, then we use this list of web element and find elements method, and same thing by CSS selector text. This is the one we are describing here, this text, and then we get the element, whatever element we need. So here, like, our syntax will be driver.findElement by CSS selector input hash username, because our ID value is username, so it input hash username, and we send input hash username to type it. So if you want to use ID value and use it as a CSS selector, the syntax will be tag hash ID. And similarly, if you want to use the class, here, like for an example, here we have the legend class WAuto. So if you want to identify this element from this class WAuto as a CSS selector, the syntax will be tag.id. Our tag will be this one, our tag will be legend. Earlier one, the tag is input, so input hash username, the ID is username. So this one, the password, input hash password, CSS by .css selector input hash password. Here input hash username, but here it will be legend.w-auto, because we are going to use class. So for an example, here what I have written is legend.wauto, and we get that text that will be login. This text is login. You can see here also, like I have seen, this text is login, and we enter that text into the username column, username text box. Okay, so our second method of identify CSS selectors by class is, the syntax will be tag.id, and then we can also use any attribute to identify. Apart from ID and class, we can use other attributes. So for that, our syntax will be tag square bracket, then we write the attribute name attribute name equal the attribute value. For an example, this one, if we have to use ID, then it will be tag hash ID, input hash ID, input hash username. If you want to use class somewhere, like it's input tag dot class name. But if you want to use like something like name or type, then we use is the tag name, that is input in this case, and our attribute parameter name, then equal the attribute value. So here also we identify the username text box and send text by attribute. And then we can use substrings like contain text, start with text, end with text. So for that there are various syntax. The first thing is, if you want to identify substring like contains, then our syntax will be, so in this case our input of username and password, the class name is this form control sm, form control lg and md, same thing. Okay, it contains the string form control lg. So if you want to identify from this one, class form control lg, because it's the class, we use the attribute class. I'm not going as input dot class, but input class. Then we use star equal. So our syntax will be the tag square bracket attribute instead of equal. Earlier, if it is exact match, we use the attribute equal the attribute value. Here attribute star equals, within single quotes we give that string we want to match from. In this case, it's from form control lg. So first element, so this one I using this second method because it can return multiple elements. So the first element will be the username, the second element will be the password. So this is to match CSSSelector matching substring. So if it is start with, for an example, now this one, this hide this password icon, when this icon is shown, that is to show the password, it will be, the class name will be FAI. If you click this one, it will become FAI slash. So always it starts with FA. So either in whatever state this is, we can use start with FA to click this one. So in this case, okay, this is before we click in that one, FAI. After we click that one, the password will be shown in plain text. Then that icon, the class will become FAI slash. Okay. So what I do is I will click it from, because this is tag I, it's I, and we are going with class, and it starts with FA, and we click it. Then next time it will be FAI slash, but still we can click it because this is shown as class start with FA. So syntax to match with start with is tag name square bracket attribute, this icon, and equal, and we do the substring within single quote. Similarly, if you want to identify something, it ends with, okay, for an example, now these two input and password text boxes, the class name ends with form control md. So to end with these, the syntax is tag square bracket attribute dollar equal the substring within single quotes. So in this case, input class dollar equals single quote form control md. So first element will be username, second element will be password. Okay, and we can identify similarly direct child. For an example, now in this case, our username it under the p tag. So class left. P tag class left. Under that we have direct tag as input. So this is a direct child, this input. So if you want to identify that one, the syntax will be, we first identify the parent with because this is the tag and this is class, so that is we can write the CSSSelector as p.left, and we use the redirect character and use the child tag input. So this will identify this input. This is first element will be again username, second element will be password. So to identify direct element, the syntax will be CSSSelector of parent, redirect character, and child tag. And if you want to identify some children like third element, fifth element, for an example, this one, we have list element like UL, ID, session location, and we have list elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what we do is we have to identify the nth child, the syntax will be CSSSelector of parent space tag of child, like in this case li, and colon nth child, and we give within bracket third child number. For an example of this one, select by CSSSelector. So for the text will be ul, because we have first identified the parent ul, because we are going by id, this is hash ul hash session location, and space li is the child tag li, and we identify the third element and fifth element like this. So we will execute this one and see how it's going to execute. So first it will identify ID and input hash username, it enter. Then it takes the text from that attribute class and it enter in login. Then see, you can see that password also icon is clicking, so you can slowly follow this one later. And okay, then lastly you can see that list will be clicked, laboratory and outpatient pharmacy. Third and fifth element, laboratory is clicked, pharmacy is clicked. Then after a while pharmacy will be clicked. So that's how it identified. So what I have to highlight is, from the CSSSelector we can use CSSSelector in different ways. If you want to identify it by the input ID tag, that is CSSSelector as ID, you have ID equals something. If you want to write it as a CSSSelector, use the syntax tag hash ID. That means input hash username, in this case use ID is username, tag is input, you use by.CSSSelector, and the text will be input hash username. If you want to do the same thing with the class, so in this case the class is wauto, so by.CSSSelector, the tag name is legend.wauto. Okay, legend.wauto. By CSSSelector you pass within bracket, you pass the text as legend.wauto, so that element will be identified. If you want to use any other attribute apart from ID and class, what the syntax will be, tag square bracket attribute equals value. In this case I am using name, so my tag is input, so input square bracket name equal username, exact match. And so if you want to use a substring, the syntax will be star equal, so tag square bracket attribute star equals the substring. So in this case I am using just form control LG, some substring. So input is the tag square bracket, class is the attribute, and class star equals form control LG. And if you want to use start with, so we use, instead of star we use this icon, this character, and if it is like ends with, we use the dollar, same thing, dollar. And direct child, the syntax will be, if you want to direct child, you identify the parent child CSSSelector and use the redirect character and use the child tag, direct child tag. In this case under P there's a direct child as input, so P dot left, because it's a class we can use dot P dot left redirect character input. If it is the nth child, so we identify the parent and then we use this space and the tag of child, and nth child the child number. In this case ul hash session location, because it's the ID session location, so ul hash session location, li is the child tag, so nth child, the third child, and laboratory, and the fifth child pharmacy. So I will have this code uploaded to my same repository, so you can download and you can simply, I have given all the comments, so you can just go and practice how we can use CSSSelector to identify the locators. Thank you.